Glitman has been in Central Florida with his wife Annetta for 30 years. They have 2 daughters working in New York. Today, Bob talks about 2 schools of thoughts referring to how money works. Each class represents 2 classes of people, middle class and wealth class. Unknowingly, we have been mired, if you will, in the largest class, the middle. In order to move to the wealth class, we must challenge our beliefs and add new beliefs. Please help me welcome Bob Glitman with his speech, When Worlds Collide.
Who doesn't want to acquire wealth? It sounds easy. Shouldn't we be following a recipe, just like we would if we were baking a cake? So we'll call this baking a financial cake. Now, unlike following a recipe to make a cake, we find that the recipe toward wealth is a little more complicated and a little bit more frustrating to make. Why? Because there are so many recipes out there. There are so many books out there. So when we have recipes that people who write them do not even create as a product, we find that there are seminars and books and information that basically are not necessarily written by people who are wealthy. They're written by people who are making money just to cover for their sale of books and seminars.
Wow.
So the question is, how do we go from one class we'll call the middle class and we'll call the wealth class? Well, my goal is, and my suggestion is, that we have to challenge our beliefs, our recipe, in order to move to a higher class, if you will, by adopting different principles than we're used to. We'll call them rules, we'll call them schools of thought. T. Harv Eker wrote a book called A Millionaire's Mind, and in it he examined middle class and the wealth class as not being just 2 different economic classes, but actually 2 different schools of thought. Each one has its own world. One world is bathed in a system that we've known all our lives. We call it our world. And then the world of people who seem to acquire wealth or have a knack for acquiring wealth, we'll call that the wealth world, thus when worlds collide. I'm going to give you 3 examples of our world, our school of thought, and how this school of thought would be approached by people in a different world, the wealth world, if you will. The first example I'm going to give you is one called the housing principle. When we buy a house, the first thought is before we do any investing, let's pay the house off. Okay. Now that seems to be the way we've been brought up. However, we shall find that number 1, the light isn't working. Number 2, that is actually a method of the method is actually one where we find that if you pay off your home, you invest after you buy the home. Now, that is challenged, or should be challenged by most of us, for the following reasons. Buying a home is an investment. An investment is founded on solid business principles. Okay. 3 principles to take notice of. 1 is we don't put all our eggs in one basket. Number 2 is that we use other people's money, not our own. And 3, we use the concept of leverage to get wealthy. So doesn't it seem safer if we buy the home, we don't have any risk, it's ours? Well, all we need to think of is the example of Hurricane Katrina wiping out homes that were non-insurable and where people had put their entire life savings and had nothing left to show for it. Or how about today, when we have a 50% drop in value of homes, and the money that's lost is our money because we used all of our money up. So the risk seems to be in the hands of ourselves. Now the second principle is using other people's money. Well, if we use our own money, that's the ballgame. If we use a little of our own money, then we use the bank's money, and the bank's money is subject to the risk. So we lose very little by putting down a very little. And the third, and probably the most difficult concept of all, is the concept called leverage. Leverage is taking a little money and buying something of greater value. In this case, let's say a home. Let's say we have a home at $200,000 and it gains 10%. Okay, that would make $20,000, right? If we have the home filled up and we made $20,000 on $200,000, that's 10% investment. But if we put $20,000 and it made $20,000 in turn, then our $20,000 begat $20,000, and now we have 100% return on investment. So I'm going to leave you with a quick thought. This is called the Rule of 72, if you look on your desk, and it's the concept of determining how much wealth you need, when you want it, and basically it goes this way. You take the interest you're earning, which could be 2% on a CD, 4% on one investment, or 8% on good solid investments over time, divide it into 72. So for example, if you took $20,000 and instead of giving it to the bank, you kept it yourself. So let's say you did, you put in not 40,000, you put in 20,000. So you've saved 20,000, and 20,000 at 8% over a period of 30 years would really take 9 years to double. And since, let's say, in a 36-year period of time, it doubled 4 times. Okay, by looking at the chart, you can see that if you double 20,000 4 times, you end up with $320,000. Not a bad return on your investment. This is an example, once again, of a thought pattern that we don't normally come in contact with, which is successful. Therefore, I think we need to challenge our beliefs once again and look at new principles and new beliefs in order for us to move ahead into a different world. Thank you very much.